Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Paranormal, the new normal. And it's a weekend edition, too. Yay! You guys love that. But I'm your host, Jeremy, as always, trying to make the world seem a little more normal. Does it ever happen? Oh, God, no. I've got to stop saying I'm trying to do it because it didn't work. But maybe it'll happen today. Maybe, because as always, I am joined by a guest to help me on this perilous quest. And my guest today is Vandanya, a UC Reiki Master, and inner child mentor, plus a lot of other things as well. But we're going to get into all that in a bit. First things first, how are you doing this fine Sunday morning? Well, for me.
I am very well and feel pretty rested, even though the energies are super intense and we have uh, a new moon, like a super new moon. I think it's a super new moon, but it's definitely a new moon in Virgo tomorrow. So it's really, I'm feeling all of that energy around me, around my field, and just being okay with all of it, just kind of like being in my center and grounding as much as I can, even though the world seems like it's really moving in a very maybe unsettling direction, but we'll see what happens. So we're just trying to live in the moment, and not get too caught up in the chaos. But thanks for asking.
Well put. Well put. I like it. And hey, Harley, thanks for watching as always. But, well, the first question I like to ask every guest in the show is simple but complicated. What made you want to go down this spiritual path that you now find yourself walking in?
I could not do it. It was a calling from spirit, from my soul, my higher self, my guides, and I just, needed to unmask my true identity and just come out of the spiritual closet and just be myself and really be of service. I always knew I had a lot of gifts. Always felt very connected to spirit, to the occult, to magic, to angels, and to the paranormal. But I really knew that just, being in that 9 to 5 job was like slowly killing my spirit, my soul. And so eventually I just found a way to make that happen and took my first Usui Reiki mastership level back in 2007. Since then, I've been reattuned several times over the years. And that really not only boosted my morale, but it really more deeply connected me and helped me to help others a lot better and just be more present in my life. So I just kind of left the old job, was in sales, basically in also in the healing industry, but more on the retail level. So working in upscale department stores, spas, salons, did hair and makeup for a long time, which is an art in itself. It's also a healing art to help people feel good on the outside. But I knew I needed to, or I desire to make people feel good on the inside. And that was to me priority. It was more important, but I didn't really have a way to take a training course and really like commit to like years of study. And then finally, I kept asking, and then the universe said yes, and I found a way to do it, and left the old limiting jobs that I've had that were just really difficult and really uninspiring. I was the happiest person. I just didn't know what was going to come next, though. So it wasn't like the easiest decision that I've ever made, but it was the best decision I've ever made, and never looked back since then.
Yeah, that's the dream right there to leave the 9 to 5. That's the dream. And I
Hmm.
mean, the day that's possible, I will be the happiest man on earth. But
Yeah.
it's not quite possible just yet. But maybe someday if this thing takes off, this podcast or my other podcast, if one of them take off, then maybe. But we'll see. It's my
Well, I
own way of
don't. Yeah,
Oh,
sorry. I don't recommend it to everyone to just like take a deep dive, like dive off of that diving board like right away, like all at once. I did it and just trusted the unknown. But I would recommend doing it just gradually and, finding a great teacher, a mentor, a guide, a coach, whoever that person is in whatever field that your calling is calling you. And then, kind of taking it slow and maybe like gradually easing and reducing your hours from that, from the rat race, from the 3D um, mentality, that mindset, the matrix. And then, just finding where you need to be. I mean, I did it all at once and it was pretty scary and unsettling, but I just, I knew I needed, for me, that's the only thing that would have worked is to take like that leap of faith. And I'm really, really happy I did. It's not such an easy task, but like I said, it changed everything for me.
yeah. I mean, I mean, it's not for, I mean, I would never just, I would never go depart that fast from from the 9 to 5 life. I never would just jump out of it completely. I can't imagine
Yeah.
that ever working for me. So I would have to
Oh,
slowly
yeah.
ease my way out of it someday. But well, maybe someday eh, if things go right, then that's possible in the future in a way. But we'll see.
It's
It's
always
been a year.
possible. It's
Yeah.
always possible. I think it's just being in the right place at the right time and really feeling on a soul level like you're ready to do this. And it takes a lot of courage. It definitely does. But the greatest thing is that I was able to find out so much about my inner world and like my gifts and healing abilities, like for example, I never knew I was a writer. I never knew that I could write content, that I was a content creator. I never knew back then that I was like a teacher where it felt like so natural that I just, even can do that in my sleep or, write an inspiring blog. It just felt and still continue to feel so connected to these divine downloads. And as far as like networking and being a meetup organizer, um, I was able to find out so much about myself that if I would have stayed in my bubble, in that really tight and comfortable bubble, I would have never really gotten to know myself and expand my gifts and really be of service in a bigger way. So I just wanted to, hopefully, this is inspiring people, whoever is listening, as well as you, Jeremy, that it is possible.
Oh, all my guests usually inspire me in some way or form. So that's part of the reason I do this show. Is it's also an uplifting thing for my life to do this show. So it's about the guests, but it also helps me in in small ways too. So I mean, if you
Yeah.
but all that goodness has to go both ways. But
Yeah.
oh, I kind of want to jump into something you said a little earlier though, because you said you and because on this show we happen to love when people tell us about when they first start experiencing the spiritual gifts. And you said from an early age you could sense
Hmm.
things, which kind of wanted to dive more into that because that's always an interesting topic.
Yeah, I always used to like see like kind of glimpses of light, like if I would turn in a certain direction or like sort of with my peripheral vision, like from the sides of my eyes, um, I was always a sensitive. I was born a sensitive uh, soul, and we call that being empathic, being an
Yep.
intuitive or psychic, telepathic, just a highly sensitive soul. Um, it hasn't always been easy to navigate that ability just because I could read minds and read thoughts and feelings of people, and that includes judgments as well as compliments. So
Yep.
also not an easy ability to navigate, but again, it's possible with the right training and the right teacher or the right information um, to be grounded and also to practice safe and healthy boundaries at the same time. But as far as spirits go, I was going to share this with you. We talked earlier that um, I used to do paranormal investigations for a while. I used to go to like a lot of haunted houses, and I had a team that I worked with, and we used to go together to people who have just lost their loved ones to communicate with their children or parents, and have these rituals. And it was very deep work. It was very sacred, and I'm so grateful that I did that. But then after a while, I felt like because I'm an empath, it was almost too much, and I didn't really want to get into any like ghost busting or battling with spirits or martial arts, because I did have somebody in my life at that time that I used to teach psychic development classes with who used to actually do that. It was like a guy thing. I think they used to like really kind of take pleasure in that, like in defeating the ghost or, battling. And that wasn't for me. I come when I make contact or connect to the spirit world, it's always with compassion
Yeah, of
and
course.
inquiry and curiosity. Um, so yeah, there was this one time. It was probably, well, actually, I'll just share two quick moments if that's okay. The
No, of
first time
course.
I ever actually saw the outline of a spirit, I was, I think I wasn't even married yet. I got married very young, and my former husband at that time and I were, I think we were leaving my mom's, on a visit to my mom, and she was waving goodbye. I'm going to get emotional probably now, but I miss her a lot. But anyway, um, so she was waving goodbye, and we were waving goodbye from the car, which was right outside of her home. Like we were just parked in the middle of the street. It was a quiet night, and there was nobody around. And then both of us looked over, and we just like looked in the direction, and we saw the outline or the form of a man that was walking behind her as she stepped away from the window and turned around. So she turned
Hmm.
around, she's walking away from the window where we were all waving goodbye to each other, and there was this very tall man. I still remember to this day, and this is like almost 40 years ago. It was a long time ago. And for the first thing I did is I looked at my then husband and I said, "Did you see what I just saw?" And he was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Doesn't that look like a man with a navy suit, like tall, bald, like very, very tall?" And then he's like, "Yeah, I saw the same person." So I said, "This is ridiculous." So I got out of the car, I rang the bell, and I said, she's like, "What? What's up? Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, you have somebody here?" She's like, "No." I mean, she was a single mom for many, many years. She was not interested in dating or anything.
Yeah.
So I kind of knew that she didn't, like nobody was actually really there in physical form. And she's like, "No, why? What happened? What did you see?" And I said, "Well, we both saw like, what I just described." And she's like, "Oh, now you're scaring me." I said, "Well, I don't mean to scare you, but we both saw it." And she's like, "Oh, that's weird." And we kind of left it at that. But later I was working with some mediums, and they said to me, "Well, that was the guardian of the house. It was probably somebody that, lived there before, you guys moved in, and we were there forever. Or it was just like the spirit of the home, but a good, positive, benevolent, kind spirit, like kind of protecting my mom." And
Yeah, of
I
course.
kind of left it at that. I was like, "That's so cool," but I've never seen that before. And of course, when you first see spirit, you always like question your sanity. Like, did I really see that? But thank goodness that, my former husband was with me and I wasn't alone seeing this. So that actually helped me to confirm, like, okay, I'm not going crazy. So that was the first encounter with the spirit
That's
world.
interesting.
Yeah,
It's almost a typical first encounter, but that's just
yeah,
to have someone next to you that sees it as well and confirms it is always an added blessing for the first time you're seeing these things, because
yeah,
then you know you're not just going. It's not like you going mental. It's that someone else is
yeah,
actually confirming that this exists. So it's a
yeah.
lovely thing.
And I also believe that it could have been an ancestor. Could have been a
Mhm.
relative, a deceased relative on my mom's side. Could have been like maybe her grandfather, who is supposedly, from what I understand, like a very holy man. And so I don't know, but so I don't really talk about this very much, but you reminded me of this encounter that I had. And I just want to remind people also that, it doesn't have to be scary. I mean, spirits are just like us. I mean, some are really cool and some are not so cool.
Mhm.
They're just disembodied. They're in another plane of existence, another dimension, another realm, right? Some are healed, some are still traumatized and really troubled, and some are caught between worlds and dimensions. I have actually a class coming up that's called Sending Lost Souls to the Light. So, this is something that I feel is very important for our planet because there are a lot of trapped, buried souls on the land, and they can really cause havoc. They can really create a lot of havoc for people. So, as well as ancestors who are also not quite healed. And so they can't really become a true ancestor. They're still like a ghost. So it's up to us to kind of do a lot of the ancestral healing work for them because they obviously weren't able to do it in their lifetime. Anyway, I'm going off topic a little bit.
Actually,
Um,
we love wormholes in this show, and I love that wormhole you went down, so that
Thank
works.
you, that rabbit hole. Yeah, so then the second time, Jeremy, was I was visiting a family. My then former husband, his side of the family had family friends in California. We're in New York. And so we were in this home that now, I mean, it wasn't until after my experience that I realized that we might have, that home that we were living in, sleeping in, swimming in, they had a swimming pool, that might have been built on native land, which is not cool. But they
Mhm.
might, I'm thinking they probably didn't know that. But it was a vortex, it was definitely a portal. And so we went to sleep just like any other night. And then I don't remember what time it was, sometime in the middle of the night, something woke me up and I looked. There was a light that caught my eye coming from the wall. There was a light. There was in real life there was a light fixture on the wall there, but it just seemed like it got brighter and brighter that where it woke me up. And as I turned to the right and I kind of try to sit up in bed, slowly from the wall, from this light fixture, I saw the shape of a spirit. Little by little, it started materializing right in front of my eyes. And first, I saw the hair, and then the body, the head, the body. And then I actually saw such lucid details. Like I saw the color of her dress, I saw the color of her hair, which was all gray. It was all gray. And then her bag, she was carrying like a clutch bag, and that was also gray. Her shoes were gray. And then actually it took a form. So it was slowly like through the vapor, right? The mist, it became a form, a physical form. And then I saw that it was actually my paternal grandmother, who I had actually almost no relationship with. Um, and then I saw the woman with this kind of smirky smile. And she said to me, "Wish me luck." And I tried to answer her and say good luck. And then I realized that I couldn't. And that's what's called like a sleep paralysis, like an energetic paralysis when you're frozen, when you're woken up from sleep. And I literally could barely move my body or talk. And then with as soon as she said, "Wish me luck," with like kind of like, haha, like wish me luck. And I was like, "Oh, good, good." And I really, really couldn't talk. So all of a sudden that same figure went back into the wall. It dissolved into thin air. Like I said, it dematerialized, right?
Oof.
I know it sounds crazy. It's like, what is this
Eh,
woman really on the up and up? Seriously? Swear to God. That's what happened. And I mean, I know people who have seen a lot, more than I have. And this was a very unique, isolated event. I've never seen that. I've never seen so clearly the form and the outline of one of my ancestors ever before. I've dreamed about them. I dream about them all the time. Have conversations with them, remember them. I have an ancestral altar, but that was like a one of a kind thing. And I hope that it can happen again in real life, not just in dream time. And then the last part of this is that I um, was like scared. I got really frightened, understandably, right? And so I turned to my husband, my then husband, and I said, like, wake up, and he's like, oh, what? Like, wake up. I just saw a spirit. I think it was my grandmother. He's like, oh, go back to sleep. You're dreaming. I'm like, no, but I'm not dreaming. And of course, I couldn't fall back to sleep. But then eventually I did. And then I was still in shock. So the next day, I told um, the friend of the family, like the son of the parents that we were staying in their home. And he said, what? If you should have told me, because I have my gun and I would have shot them. I would have shot it. I'm like, you can't, they're already dead. What do you mean? Like, what? You can't shoot a spirit. And anyway, that's probably not good karma. So why would you do that? And then I thought, okay, I need to just let this go. And then I believe that I had some friends at work, and one of them was a medium, and she just was like, yeah, I mean, she obviously had a message for you, and it was probably uh, like a portal there. And it was very easy for her to find her way to connect with me. But that was my first encounter. Well, second, actually. And I'll never forget it. I'm really deeply grateful. I still think about it to this day. Like, I wonder what she meant by wish me luck. And then I was told, well, she might have been going to a higher level of evolution. And that could probably be why you know, she was shifting. She was up leveling to a different dimension on her own soul path, her, spiritual evolution. So I think that's what it meant. But yeah, that was pretty incredible.
Sounds incredible. I mean, and you can't. I love it. You can't shoot a ghost. No, unless you have some actual Ghostbusters equipment, you can't shoot a ghost.
Not a
But
good idea. It might even backfire on you. So yeah, I
literally, yeah.
mean, this was not like a person that I was friends with or anything at all, or that I had any respect for. So it wasn't really a surprising comment that he made. But yeah, so those are pretty much like the main encounters that I've had in the spirit world. I am able to see through veils and those little bubbles when you take a bubble bath. Like, I'm able to see the crystals inside of the bubbles when I defocus my
Really?
eyes. Yeah. I always thought that everyone could do that. Sometimes if
No.
I softly, like if I relax my eyes, I'm able to see the outline. And also I've seen body doubles as well, like on the beach. I remember I was just walking. Um, I wasn't walking, there was a person walking in front of me by the shore, and I was just like relaxing, sitting up, and I literally saw their body double, like the outline,
Oh,
of their other body, their astral body. And
yeah.
I also tend to see like a lot of colors when I gaze at the sun. I see a lot of sort of columns of light and like beams of different color light, and it's very beautiful when I close my eyes. Yeah, so this is why I hope to empower and inspire a lot more people so that they can open up their gifts as well and activate their higher senses, and just um, just receive sometimes even life-changing messages and information from spirit, especially from the thousands of helpers and invisible light beings that I work with and that I teach people how to channel as well.
That's yeah. I mean, there's a lot the spirit world has to offer us that we are just starting to realize. I mean,
Yeah.
spiritual awakenings have been happening for the last debated. This is debated, but I mean, in my opinion, it's been happening for the last 12 years. multiple spiritual awakenings happened the last 12 years, and more people are able to embrace the spirit world, the other dimension that holds spirits, and the fourth dimension, as some call it. And I actually had a guest the other night saying that he speaks with Arcturians, an extraterrestrial
Hmm.
species, and
Yeah.
they believe that the fourth, there are people who can embrace the fourth dimension are going to kind of start to separate from people who only embrace the third dimension, and it's not going to be a physical, you can see it type of change, but it's going to
Hmm.
be more of a spiritual change, and it's going to greatly impact the world when it does happen. But it's when is a whole other question. But
Well, my point of view is that it's already happening slowly and gradually. We can't ascend all at once overnight. It's going to take at least 144,000 of us who share um, this energy, this frequency, higher dimensional frequency, but that are open to make contact with the higher dimensional councils of light, whatever you want to call them. I work with Arcturians. I work with galactic divine doctors, surgeons, and shamans. So these are they perform etheric light surgeries on people, and they work with the etheric body. And so Arcturians and also Syrians. I also work with a lot of Syrians. Also, a lot of the goddesses like Isis and Sekhmet and Bast, and a lot of the blue rays, and the ancient Egyptian guides, goddesses, gods and goddesses, um, this divine feminine energy. So the Arcturians really are the ones that want to see us not only survive but thrive as a human species, so we can move from uh, Homo sapien to Homo luminous light beings. And so I also work with the Arcturians for several years now with a specific um, physician, cosmic physician. But all of that's on my website, so in my library. So I don't want to give too much away, but yeah, I mean, they're definitely watching us and they are overlighting us, and that's a good thing because I don't think we really know what we're doing here these days.
no,
I mean, I think
no,
we're
we
like
don't.
really self-destructive to the point of we can go extinct at any moment. So it's good to
Very
know
true.
that we have friends in high places.
It is, and since you also are a podcast host, I will say, which we'll get into that in a little bit, of course. But if you ever get a chance to get Dean Graves on your podcast, I think the two of you would have a very enlightening conversation.
That name sounds familiar, but I am writing it down now.
He he
Dean Graves.
his first book was called "Chatting with the Arcturians,"
Awesome.
and
Yeah.
he's got a second book coming out. That's why he just actually was on my show for a second time. Is because he has
Oh,
another
that's,
book.
thank
He has
you.
he has another book coming out about consciousness. So
Hmm. Beautiful.
very very wise man. But I think the two of you would your conversation would be definitely worth listening to. But
Thank you.
wanted to tap into though the Reiki side of things because we do love Reiki on this show, as I told you pre-show. I mean, I, as my audience knows, I worked with a Reiki master who was on the show previously for 6 months last year, and it literally opened parts of my brain I didn't know were there. So, and made me aware of a connection to the earth, the spiritual realm, whatever you want to call it, in a way that I didn't know was possible. So,
Yeah.
I do I do highly believe in Reiki and now. I didn't at first even when I first started working with it, I didn't believe in it, but
Yeah.
I was made a believer. And so but and watch me screw it up now. Yusu, I just screwed it up, did
Usui.
I?
It's
Yusui,
the
see,
founder. He was the founder of Reiki, uh, the modern day version that came from Japan to the West. But actually, Reiki has been in existence from the beginning of time. Many people say that Jesus was the first Reiki healer because it's laying on of the hands, right? But this is authentically, not necessarily to create like a instantaneous, miraculous,
Yeah.
spontaneous healing, or like to get people to be able to walk who couldn't walk before. It's not really like faith healing, but this is more about like um, the connection to life force energy, the raising of our vibration, the expansion of our energy fields, and the raising of our consciousness, right? So it's connecting again to the higher realms. And like you said, Jeremy, you can't really talk about it until you experience it like firsthand. Um, and because there's no such thing really as time or space, there's no division, separation, duality, it's all an illusion. Um, we can send Reiki just with our intention, just with a really clear, strong, focused desire and intention from our heart space. We can send Reiki to people, places, things, to our inner child, to our future self. And it's just a way of really getting that guidance and that strong connection and grounding. And it's really the deepest form of relaxation and stress reduction that I know of. So it's really a rebalancing act. It's really about centering and balancing our energy centers, our chakras. Um, and there's nothing else like it. I remember I was working in a spa offering Reiki sessions, and I had to educate a lot of people. And this was about 7 years, 6, 7 years ago. I had to educate a lot of people about what Reiki is. Reiki is just divine love and life force energy. It's universal life force energy. And it's like a reconnection to this energy because we've become unplugged and disconnected in so many ways, due to traumas and things like that, accidents, injuries. So I remember talking to this guy, and after I gave him a session, he didn't know what to expect either. And he said, wow, he thought he was going to have a massage, and that's what he booked. I said, no, it's not really a massage. I had one woman like take off all her clothes, and she was just wearing a robe, like a spa, like white terry robe.
Yeah.
And I was like, put your clothes back on, number one. This is not a massage. This is Reiki. She's like, oh, they told me I should do that. I was like, no, I'm sorry. I have to educate the front desk too. But anyway, the guy said, wow, you know what? This is so much better. This is way beyond a massage. So much better. I'm going to ask for Reiki the next time I come here. I was like, great.
It's I would actually call it a massage for your spirit.
I love
That's what
that.
I mean. It actually really is. It makes
Well,
you walk away feeling like you're walking on air. You walk away
yes.
feeling like all your worries are gone for however short time it lasts. Your worries are gone. I mean, it may only last 10 minutes. It may last a day or two, but depends on what happens after that. I mean, I literally have had things happen that put me in a bad mood right after I got done with Reiki. And I'm like, oh, come on. Why? You couldn't wait an hour or two? Like, let me enjoy this. But it's
Yeah.
just, that's life. You can't do anything about that. But of
Well, I just want to, if I can, just share
course,
that I always advise or suggest that people don't, that they kind of take a nap or a rest, or maybe just take a walk in nature, and not be exposed to any toxic energies or, energy drainers, like people who have like a low vibe, or, you know what I mean, who might be troubled or addicted and things like that. And to really just enjoy being in this bubble, this space of grace, and to enjoy as long as you can, to really soak up and bathe in this energy, and also maybe to take a shower or a bath and just bathe themselves in light, rub their hands together and just imagine that they're just like the light is streaming over them and through them, and they could actually like, yeah, bathe in light, cleanse themselves, because that's what it is. It's cleansing, it's clearing, it's purifying all of the inner swallowed poisons and toxins that we are exposed to, especially if you identify as being an empath. we're like sponges, right? So I always
Yep.
say, like, if you really want this to last even longer, this sensation of bliss, um, like nothing's wrong, like you're just so connected to spirit and you feel so cared for and nurtured and protected, then if you want that to last longer, just kind of take time for yourself and to enjoy that, and really even to stay away from 5G technology. Like, don't be on your cell phone, don't go back to work, don't go on your laptop, at least give yourself like 3 to 5 hours of that, if not longer. And don't talk to anyone. That's even better. Don't talk to
So,
anyone.
so here's what you do, folks. Get some Reiki done. Grab a 12 pack beforehand, and then go sit in the back porch with a 12 pack by yourself after you have it done. That's my advice. That's my advice.
Look, you know what? I'm not a judge of anyone, like whatever works for you. But I think just to sit in that stillness and that silence and just to reflect on how loved you are, and how just being in a body and being granted a life and incarnation is in itself a rarity, is in itself a gift and a blessing. And many souls don't have the opportunity to be reincarnated or even incarnated here on the earth or even on another planet for centuries. So that is a gift. And it's like, what are you going to do with this gift? How will you make the most out of your gifts and really heal and recover from all the trauma that we've been exposed to, that we experienced as children, even back in the womb? It started back then. Not for everyone, but for a lot of us. So it's just about that connection, that cosmic connection to your true self with a capital S.
Yes, I agree 100%. And actually, that kind of is a good segue because as I said earlier, folks, Vandana does host a podcast,
Hmm.
adult children in recovery, moving from insanity to serenity. And I did kind of want to touch on the inner child a little bit because it's not really a discussion we've had too much in the show. We've talked
Yeah.
about it here and there, mentioned it, but we never really dug into it a little bit. So I figured now would be a good opportunity to finally get into it because after 200 episodes, we need to dig into new things now and then. So
Thank you. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't realize that I was, quote unquote, a survivor of childhood trauma because I never experienced physical abuse.
yeah,
It was just more of, being raised by emotionally unavailable, neglectful, narcissistic parents on both sides, mother and father. They would take turns. And because they didn't work out their own wounds, they never healed their own childhood wounds. They just transmitted that and passed it on to me and my brother. And I would say like probably 80% or even higher um, of the population um, is affected in our adult life. That's why we're called adult children, because we're still in denial that those things actually happen, or we block them out and we can't even remember, or we look at other people who have experienced severe forms of abuse, physical, emotional, sexual, um, and we think, oh, it wasn't that bad, because we tell ourselves this, so we don't have to deal with that or go
hmm
to therapy. So just reading books about 2, 3 years ago, I realized that, okay, I can't ignore this anymore. I have to come out and admit and start my healing process, my recovery process from all the traumas. And that was passed on to me generation to generation. I also started going to a group called ACA, which stands for Adult Children of Alcoholics, and Para Alcoholics, which means dysfunctional families, dysfunctional homes, um, where the behaviors and the lack of boundaries is very similar to being raised by a parent who's addicted to drug or alcohol or whatever addiction that may be. And I found that I started going to meetings, and then I realized, it's actually a 12-step group that really has helped me a lot. I created my own group and really have been working these steps for the last year and a half. Um, and really been tending to my inner child, getting to know her, reparenting her, becoming her own loving parent, which is not an easy task, but with a support system, just to be able to talk about it, because we're taught three things subliminally growing up in a dysfunctional household. It's don't talk, don't trust, and don't feel. So we finally, as adults, get to talk and also be heard, really have a voice. So this has been the most healing um, form of recovery, even way beyond therapy, because a lot of therapists are not trauma informed therapists. They're cognitive behavioral therapists. They're social workers. They don't have that unique training in complex PTSD. So that's why I've passed on this knowledge and this support and like a practical way to recover from trauma to all of my students and clients. So I teach them through guided meditation, through journeys, through mindfulness experiences, like how to be more present and and repair all those unhealed wounds that are still playing out and affecting our adult relationships and really creating a lot of damage and even potential danger in the world. I just had a guest on my podcast who's a psychotherapist, and we talked about the potential threat and danger of unhealed adult children. That's what we're called, who never really dealt with all this stuff. And how, when that happens, and like the terrible twos, the toddlers that have these hissy fits and that like have too much power and are maybe spoiled or they act in impunity with impunity. They're
Yep.
never held accountable. Like, what happens then when these types of wounded children become adults, don't deal with it, don't get treated, or, don't have a handle on it, are in denial about it, and then they are put in positions of power in the government. So we can name a few, but we don't have to. I think everyone pretty much can think of at least one or two people
Oh,
in international affairs, that this
oh
is
God, yeah.
actually happening, where we can even call it a genocide that's actually happening in the world. So this is because those people never went to therapy, they never went to a support group, they stuffed it, they blocked it, they never dealt with all of their pent up rage and anger and fury. Because they were traumatized children that, finally they were disempowered as children, and they didn't have a voice as children. They didn't have any power. And when they grow up, they can really lash out and affect like thousands, if not millions, of lives on the planet. And so that is why I really believe in dealing with your stuff, processing it, integrating it, and really accepting that that happened and that's okay. It's not nothing wrong with it. What's right about it. And how does your life get even better once you come to terms with your childhood, with your history, right? And with all the generations before you that also didn't have that level of consciousness to heal and to recover from all of their wounds, their abandonment, their neglect, and all of that. So it's really, really everything to me.
Which, I mean, it definitely, childhood affects us more than we thought in previous generations. That's for damn sure. I mean,
Yeah.
I try, I have, see, that's the biggest issue is I used to think I had a great, like, memory recollection of my childhood. I don't. Like,
Yeah.
I, like,
Hmm.
I mean, either I don't, or I mean, when I bring up memories, my mom tries to tell me that's not true. I'm like, I have clear recollection of this. Why are you trying to lie to me? Like,
Right.
it's like,
Yeah, it's very common, and I'm laughing with you. Because it's kind of ludicrous, and it's happened in my own family tree. There's a lot of unhealed wounds in my own family tree, my ancestral lineage. My brother, for example, my older brother, and my mother have always been at odds. There was always a lot of tension and hostility, really coming from my brother to my mother. And when I checked in, just out of curiosity with both of them, I got two different versions of the
Hmm.
same timeline. And basically, he told me, well, she forced me as a child to go to a psychiatrist and get, and start taking like Ritalin and stuff like that. Because, I guess like he was different. He was probably an empath too, a sensitive soul, and she wasn't. She was, if anything, like really numb and frozen and shut down. And so maybe she just didn't understand where he was coming from. And so that's what she did, according to him. And when I asked her, when I told her what he related to me, she said, that's not true. That's a lie. I never did that. And so I just thought, well, one of you is not necessarily intentionally not telling the truth, but you have different versions of what you remember. And now I look back at it and I think, well, that's okay, because maybe it's protecting both of you in some way to not remember what actually did happen. Because there's like his version, her version, or whatever, two versions of the truth, and then there is the actual truth. So we'll never know, but what you said makes a lot of sense. Sometimes we
I
block these
mean,
memories because it's too painful to remember them.
yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't have any childhood of, physical or
Hmm.
any serious mental abuse at least. But I mean, it's just
Right.
uh, I I don't know. I've actually been debating for a while now if my mother actually is a narcissist or not. Part of me is like a hard yes, and then the little part of me wants that denial and be like, I don't know. But
Okay, I have a solution for you if you're open. So I had an amazing narcissist coach on my podcast a couple of episodes ago. I'm trying to remember his last name. His first name is Darren. It's on my YouTube channel, Vandana Light Healing, and he talks about um, he shares that he treats people who don't even know that they are a narcissist. And because it's such a wide spectrum, everyone has some slight like characteristics of being narcissistic, and that's okay. But also, I wouldn't want his job, because that to me feels like the hardest job in the world, to get people to admit that they may. And if they do express those behaviors or attributes, it's only because they were probably raised by
yep,
narcissists. So they weren't raised by healthy, positive, loving, nurturing role models. So you can only, like they say in the ACA, like, of course you are the way you are. There's understandably what happened to you, the way you were raised and brought up as a child. How could you have turned out any differently? You couldn't have. But that doesn't mean that we have to, suffer repeatedly, or we have to repeat the behaviors, the toxic behaviors that we were exposed to with our own children or in our relationships. So about being a narcissist, there are tons of books about that, about having a narcissistic mother or father. I too uh, can identify with that, and I almost feel like they were both on that spectrum, just like autism. It's such a wide spectrum.
I mean,
All of us are
yeah,
a
it
little
is.
bit atypical and neurodiverse. So, what's normal, like you
Yeah,
said, anyway.
and I mean, and I mean, narcissism is just basically looking out for yourself before anybody else, and we all
Yeah.
do that. We all do that to some degree because we have to, because that's
Well,
how
we
we
should.
survive.
That's healthy, actually, to love ourselves, to look
Yeah,
out for ourselves. But when it becomes dysfunctional, or when it hurts other people, because we know hurt people hurt people, that's when it's really a good idea to take a look and talk to somebody, talk to a professional about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we're actually dealing with another narcissist issue in our lives, which I will gladly talk to you about off camera. Not gonna talk, I can't talk about it on camera, but
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to
but
hear.
but I guess the next place to go is, well, I mean, it's funny you brought politics, so I could definitely name a couple, but I like to try to keep that stuff off this show because I'm gonna lose a lot of listeners if I start giving
No,
my
I
opinions on politics.
understand that's always that like delicate, like walking on eggshells, or it's a balancing act. And I mean, I am struggling with that too, of just being quiet and not sharing what I know to be true. And so I totally respect that. And I also working on trying to better understand and have more compassion for people who don't agree with, where I'm at. But there is so much division, so much
That's all
separation.
that's all you see on social media. That's all you see in your hometown, for God's sakes. Nowadays is, I mean, my whole life, I've never seen people get so worked
No,
up over political differences. I mean, my whole life, and I was around for a lot of
yeah.
interesting elections.
Yes, I totally hear you, Jeremy. Yep, totally hear
I
you.
mean, there's a nice little band of guys in their trucks in my town that like to drive around and honk their horns with their Trump flags flying. So, you know,
Oh,
it's and
ouch.
I ain't gonna say whose side I'm on my podcast on any podcast, but it's
Right.
just yeah,
It-
it's interesting.
these are adult children. This is the perfect example of unhealed, wounded adult children acting out. That's what 2-year-olds do. They act out, right? If they don't
And
get their
actually,
way, they act out, and they can create lots of havoc for people. If they don't get their way.
and, and actually, this happened a few months ago, and it was on our town page. But this kind of is a good thing because it shows both sides of the aisle.
Right.
During one of these presentations where they were setting up somewhere with their flags, uh, one of them had their granddaughter with them or their daughter, something like that, and somebody else drove by in a car and started yelling out. I forget exactly what he said, but he started yelling out this little kid about how he's a bad man, talking about Trump, and the little girl was yelling back, no, he's a good man, and he started yelling out, your father's a bad man too, and this video was just basically of this grown man who had to
Yeah.
have an argument with a child over
Yeah.
political when the kid is just obviously following what her family
It's
believes.
insanity.
She's not old enough to know. She's not old enough to know everything about the issues and the different parties. Like
That's
she's just
abuse. That's child abuse.
basically. I mean, no one's gonna do. It got posted all over the town page, and people were hating on the man, hating on the other man, and of course,
Hmm.
people pick sides because town pages
Scary.
are one of the worst things in American culture. But
It's very
they got
scary what's happening in the world. And this is why I had that guest on, that psychotherapist, and she actually wrote a book called America in Therapy. Her name is Phyllis Levitt. Shout out to Phyllis. She's incredible. She's in New Mexico, and her work is like really important and needs to be heard. So I really loved having her on as a guest, because it just makes so much sense that this is the reason, because of trauma. It's all we live in a toxic culture, and that's what a lot of trauma therapists and teachers like Gabor Mate say. We live in a toxic culture. And what is a normal anyway? So, yeah,
exactly. There is no normal.
yeah.
I mean, okay, well, there is a new normal, and it's the paranormal. So there you go, taking
There
it
you
full circle.
go. Yay. Love it. Love it. Beautiful.
But in these last few minutes, I'm actually going to let you tell people what your podcast is about and why they
Yeah.
should come listen to it.
Yeah, and I also have a website, also Vandana Light Healing. Everything's Vandana Light Healing. My YouTube channel, my podcast on Buzzsprout. It's Vandana, V like victory. Light Healing. That's my spiritual name. That very beautiful, we call her Divine Mother. Her name is Amma. She's a spiritual, like, mother figure, an avatar, ascended master from India. She's also known as the Hugging Saint. So she gave me my name, which is a very high vibrational name. It's a blessed name many years ago. So that's what most people know me by. So as far as my adult child podcast, you can just search for, and I could send you the links, Adult Children in Recovery, Moving Beyond Insanity to Serenity. And that's everywhere. It's on my YouTube channel. You can also find me on Facebook. You could also find me on Instagram. They're all Vandana Light Healing. That's my name everywhere. Make it easier for people to find me. And I also offer 15-minute discovery sessions or clarity calls, so people can really ask me any question they want. And also I can make recommendations. I have over 250 different types of healing programs in my Divine Light library. And these work remotely. A lot of all of it is really infused with Reiki, life force energy. So they're basically guided journeys on every healing topic that you can think of. And so they're all in my library. And I try to find really interesting guests to interview, but I'm also on a lot of podcasts, and I really had fun today with you, Jeremy. So thank you for having
Oh,
me.
it's been a lot of fun. It's been my pleasure. I always enjoy these conversations. Well, 98% of the time. And this one was definitely in that 98%. So I truly enjoyed it. And I want to thank you for coming on. And I urge all my listeners, go check out our podcast, because I mean, who knows? Maybe you are dealing with some inner child drama that you don't know you are, really. And maybe you need to work
Yeah.
through it. Ain't nothing wrong with it. Everybody has their own things to work through. Everybody. Don't tell me you don't. Everybody does. So everybody has something to work through, for God's sake. So,
And it's not your fault. It's has nothing to do with you. You did nothing wrong. It just gets passed on. These are like transmissions. We are transmitted, or we inherit the good and the bad and the ugly, right? So to speak. So the gifts, the resourcefulness, the strength and the resilience, the creativity, even the psychic abilities from our ancestors, maternal and paternal. But we also get all the toxic stuff too, that they didn't have a chance to work out in their lifetimes. So it's up to us to take care of all of those parts of us, that are still hurting and wounded, so we could live an amazing, charmed, magical life. So yeah, I just want to let people know that it didn't start with you, whatever you're going through, yeah.
yeah, I mean, as Billy Joel said, folks, we didn't start the fire. We're just trying to contain it. But you, all my listeners, you know where you can find me by now. If you don't, shame, just shame. But it's in the outro. Check the outro. It's there. Yes. Yes, that's how I do. I tell you to go get help, and then I shame you. So it works. But come check me out this week. I'll be back with more interviews. I'm pretty sure Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. But I haven't looked at my calendar, so don't hold me to that. I have busy schedule, but always.
Awesome.
But then again, some guests like to not show up. But so that happens.
Shame.
You gotta overbook to make up for the ones who don't. Exactly. So,
Yeah.
but enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend, folks, and I will see you all this week at some point. Have a good one.
Thank
And
you,
thank you,
Jeremy.
Vandana, for coming on. It's been a pleasure.